are you really ready for retirement? And I don't just mean financially, but I also mean mentally and emotionally. In some regards, the financial challenge of getting ready for retirement is kind of the easy part, right? It's quantitative. We know what the numbers are. It's easy in concept, but it's difficult in practice to get there. But, a lot of us haven't been giving enough thought to the emotional and the mental challenges. So let's go for a walk and let's talk about this. This is the age-old challenge, and it was no easier 50 years ago than it is now, right? Transition in life can be difficult. If you went to college, for many of us in college, we think about, our college years, and, when we were in college getting ready to transition into the work world, a lot of us was like, I don't want to do that. I want to stay in college, right? Because it was what was known. Same thing for high school to college. I think a lot of us were excited about college, but some of us were apprehensive, and rightfully so. And it's the same thing here. We're transitioning from something that's known into something that's not known. And that can be difficult. And as I say, this has been the case throughout the ages, right? Transitioning into what you don't know is always challenging. And I think particularly in American society, because we're very much an independent society, some of us may have had parents that talked to us about that and got us ready and taught us through their challenges. But, for most of us, that's something that we don't talk about, right? Our parents probably passed away well before we were ready to retire, at least a decade before. And so it's an unknown. But one of the things I can tell you, having worked with hundreds of families, is the transition is the hardest part, right? Once you're in this new life, it gets easier. But there are phases to that. And let me share a couple things. Letting go of the familiar for the unknown is a challenge. And it's important to try to enjoy the process and embrace the unknown and explore and be curious. It's also important to practice ahead of time. I've got videos, I can link to them up above here, where I talk about mini retirements and kind of practicing the things that you might want to do in retirement. That can be extremely helpful. If you think you want to work for a local not-for-profit, volunteer for a not-for-profit, maybe try to spend some extra time doing that before it really comes to the time where that's what you're transitioning into. So we can practice some of these things. If you think you want to travel, boy, if you could get a sabbatical for a month and slow travel through Southeast Asia, that can be a good sign to see what does that feel like. And I can tell you, having done that myself, having done these mini retirements myself, I was fortunate during the pandemic. I was able to work remotely, and once countries opened up and I felt I could do it safely, I did work remotely for 2 months at a time in Southeast Asia and then also in South America. And I can tell you, life is different, right? It's not a vacation. You start to transition. The first week or two, you remember who you are. But then the longer you're gone, you kind of transition into this new person. And it can be challenging. It can be really exciting and fresh and new, but it also comes with its challenges. So the first one is just letting go, taking that leap, letting go of the known, I think is really the first step. And then, the common struggles is what did retirement mean 30 years ago? When people weren't as healthy, they weren't as fortunate as we are. They couldn't count on as many weeks of healthy active time. I use the phrase, if you're 60 years old, you likely only have 1,000 weeks remaining of healthy active time. And that's a relatively new phenomenon. For the generation before us, and certainly 2 generations before us, they didn't have 1,000 weeks to look forward to. Maybe they had 200 weeks to look forward to. The average life expectancy was quite a bit less, 50 or 60 years ago. So it's a luxury that we have this time, but we also have to think, what are we going to do that's going to give us a sense of purpose and joy and meaning and excitement and passion in retirement. So it's a new challenge. So, in the past, maybe people said, well, I'm going to play golf as long as my health allows me to or, I'm going to play cards with my friends. or I'm going to fish. Those were the common retirement activities. And now those are still popular, but now there's other things that we can do for several reasons, right? The cost of travel has gone down. So anyways, this is a common challenge, and there's 4 criteria I want you to think about as you think about and you prepare for retirement. You want to think about your activities being social. You want to think about there being some routine associated with what you're doing, just so it's predictable. You're leaving a predictable life, and you want to transition into something that has some routine component to it. You want something that's challenging, that's not easy and it's not boring, but it's somewhat challenging to the extent that you're looking for that. And then it's measurable. So what are some examples of that? I talked earlier about golf. That's still a popular retirement activity. Those are all of those things, right? There's a social component if you're playing with other people. There can be a routine, right? You've got your friends that you golf with every Tuesday and Saturday. Challenging, I don't know about you, but golf will always be challenging for me. And measurable, it's hard to get more measurable than that, right? You have a handicap. So anyways, those are some examples. Other examples are volunteering. Another example would be learning a new language. I think I've shared earlier that 5-6 years ago, I spent about 3 years really working hard to become conversational and comfortable in Spanish. And it reached all of those. It was certainly, for me, it was challenging. There was a routine, a study routine that I developed. It was challenging. It was social because I had teachers. So anyways, it checked all of those boxes. And then, other people, golf doesn't have to be the only thing. Certainly in my neighborhood, pickleball is really popular. And I see senior citizens going back into the gym because, they need to increase their flexibility in their hips, or they need to strengthen their knees, or whatever the case is. So those are just some examples. But, transitions have always been challenging. And some of the things that you see in transitions, and it's not necessarily pleasant, but some of the transitions that happen as we retire, there's some called gray divorce, which are divorces that happen over 65. So, some of these transitions you have control over, and many you don't. Hopefully you don't have to worry about that. I do encourage you to invest in your relationship and keep your relationship healthy. I have a friend that's doing a remodel on his house, and he wants to live in his house during the remodel, and his wife is appropriately saying, no, I don't want to do that. That's just going to be too stressful. And my friend's like, I don't want to spend the $3,000-$4,000 a month to rent an apartment short term. And I just reminded him that, $3,000 or $4,000 a month for 6 months is a heck of a lot cheaper than a divorce. So hopefully you don't have to worry about that. Other transitions is, unfortunately, you or your spouse might lose their health. You might lose your spouse, right? Your spouse might pass away before you. So that's certainly a very difficult transition. Illness, I talked about losing health. And then there's the kind of jokes as we're, younger and we're in our 20s and 30s, and we say, the early bird special, and talking about your prescriptions, and the physical rehab that you need to do after you tweaked your knee playing pickleball. Those are all realities. Those are all in all of our futures. So we might have joked about it in the past, but it's reality. So next, are you ready for retirement? I want to talk about the typical stages. People talk about, the stages after somebody passes, the stages of grief. And there's also stages for retirement. And the first stage is, anticipation. And that's where you're getting ready. You're making sure you have a financial plan. You're making sure you have the financial resources. I would encourage you, this is a really important time to talk to somebody that's advised people through retirement in the past. And whether that's a retirement coach or a fee-only financial advisor, I should share, none of this is financial advice. This is financial education. This is to give you things to put on your radar screen for you to think about ahead of time. But again, that first phase is just anticipation. And this can be, several years. It can be a decade as you're thinking about financially, what do I need to do? But then as you get closer, I think it's important, certainly for both spouses, to be on the same page. and for both spouses to be talking to each other about, what does retirement look like to me? What does it look like for us as a couple? And to the extent you have kids, sharing with your kids, hey, this is mom and dad's game plan, and we just want to let you know. And maybe part of that game plan is spending more time with your adult kids, or being more involved in the life of your grandkids, which can be an excellent experience. But the anticipation period, I just encourage you to communicate that and make sure everybody's on board and knows what your game plan is. And to the extent you're on different pages, try to find some common ground. I think that can be extremely helpful. So the first phase can last years, and then there's the ending the work stage. Typically one or both spouses are leaving a job, and there's giving notice to your current employer, and then working through that transition, whatever the notice period is. And that there's getting all the paperwork done for the new benefits, getting the paperwork done for Social Security and Medicare, all of that depending on what your age is and what you've decided to do on Social Security, when you're going to take Social Security. But it's getting all of that paperwork done. If you're retiring before you qualify for Medicare, what's the game plan for health insurance? Are you going to go on the company's COBRA? Are you going to buy your insurance on the exchange, the healthcare exchange programs, or are you just going to buy it outright? So what's that game plan? So it's that ending the work phase, setting up different accounts. What are you going to do with your 401k? Are you going to roll that over into an IRA? And if any of this sounds interesting to you, if any of this is like, hey, Azul, I'd really like to learn more about this, leave me a comment. I do read the comments, and on that subject, leave me a thumbs up if this video is helpful. I still have more to go, but I just wanted to remind you now, leave me a thumbs up. Please do take a second. It makes it, it's super helpful for the channel, and it helps YouTube's algorithm understand the types of people these videos can help. So do me a favor, if this video is resonating with you, hit the thumbs up. Okay, enough said on that. So we've got the first phase, which is anticipation. The next phase is ending work phase. And then there's the passage phase, where we're kind of getting used to this new life, right? And that's usually measured in years, typically at least 1 year, oftentimes 2 or 3 years, where you're getting used to this new life. You think about it, when you went to college, that was, we had to gear up. We had to get ready for the workload in college, or your trade school. Maybe you went into maintenance, or went into being a plumber or an electrician, and that can take years to become a journeyman, to become a master at what you do. So there's a transition associated with that was not measured in months, it was measured in years. Same thing when we started work. For some of us, it's like, this whole work thing seems unnatural, right? You had to be in meetings, and there was a different way that you worked with and responded to other people. It was just a different team dynamic than maybe we had before we started our full-time career. So it took a couple years to kind of figure that out, and now at the end of our career, it's our new normal. And that's what's going to happen in retirement too. The final stage is a new normal, and you are retired, and you think of yourself as retired, and you're very comfortable being in retirement. And you'll probably say things that I've heard a lot of people say, which is, I don't know how I had time to work before. You now have a new normal. Maybe you're involved in your adult children's life and helping with the grandkids, or you've got a not-for-profit that you're super active in, or you're traveling the world and you're doing slow travel and you're spending several months on a continent and then coming back to the U.S. to recharge and remind yourself who you are. I found with myself, when I was gone more than 3 or 4 weeks, I had to reground myself and come back to the U.S. And you just become a different person, both in good ways and in ways that, had you stayed in the U.S., you wouldn't have changed. And you have lives, you have relationships that you want to keep strong. So reconnecting with those people is important. But whatever that new life is, at some point, you transition to that, and you can't imagine going back. So those are the stages in there. Some cautions as you're going through the early stages, certainly, at least from a financial standpoint. It's it's important, I think, from a financial standpoint, that you don't make any big decisions as you're going through this transition. I think, to the extent you can get to your new life before you make any certainly irreversible changes, I think that's helpful. And I'll give you some examples. Some people like the security that comes with annuities. I personally am not a fan of annuities. I'm not an annuity specialist, but I think anything you can do within an annuity, you can also replicate outside of an annuity. Not entirely, right? You're basically transferring the investment risk to somebody else. But oftentimes annuities have big surrender charges. So if you change your mind in a couple years, you can be losing 4, 5, 6%. So maybe even buying a new house in a new location, maybe rent until you really feel like this new location is home. So I like, no irreversible decisions, I think, until you're pretty close to or you're in that new life stage, right? I think it's okay to pay a premium to rent as opposed to buy. You've heard in previous videos, I am a fan of home ownership, but no big financial decisions, and really try to minimize or eliminate any financial decisions that are hard to reverse, are expensive to reverse. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you are ready for retirement, both the financial aspects of it and the non-financial aspects of it. I hope you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. As I said earlier, it really does help YouTube find other people that my videos and my channel can help. And it helps me personally, so I appreciate you taking a second to do that. As the kids say, thumbs for likes and subs for love. If you're not a subscriber, think about subscribing if you like these kind of videos. I post multiple videos a week, typically on the topic of getting ready for retirement and thriving in retirement and taking full advantage of the youth of your senior years. Remember, we're only young once. Let's use this time wisely. And until my next video, I'm Azul. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.